The Oracl Network. Look deeper.
We have an active shooter. We have an active shooter inside the warehouse.
Welcome to Active Shooter, a podcast that covers the whys, the hows, and the aftermath of active shooter and mass casualty events.
They have an active shooter in the building. A second call says they are being attacked.
I've been shot. 1692 means we got shots fired. 4:15 a.m. Route 291. Sounded like an automatic firearm.
Active shooter, reports of an active shooter,
mass casualty incidents.
Thank you for listening.
You are listening to Active Shooter, a podcast that may contain adult themes, explicit language, and graphic depictions of violence. Portions of this show may be traumatic for those under 18. Listener discretion is advised.
Breaking news. You might say heartbreaking news. A heartbreaking day in Florida, and sadly an all too familiar one. 17 people are now confirmed dead. We know at least 3 people still in critical condition after police say that a shooter, believed to be just 19 years old, opened fire at his former high school. Over and over again this year, we have seen, heard, and reported on sad and harrowing scenes like this one. How many depends on how you define a school shooting. This is the 4th shooting at a middle or high school just this year in 2018. You see chaos, terrified students, their hands on their heads, running to safety, frightened parents rushing to the school, waiting for word on their children. Are they dead or alive? And watching heavily armed SWAT teams, armored vehicles surrounding Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. According to students, it was about 2:30 in the afternoon, just 10 minutes before the end of the school day, when the fire alarm went off. And that, they say, is when the gunman began shooting.
At about 12:20 p.m. on February 14th, 2018, Chris McKenna was making his way through a stairwell at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. He was looking forward to the end of the day and wasn't expecting to see a young man dressed in clothes, much like many other Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School students would wear. He had on a burgundy junior ROTC shirt, black pants, and a baseball cap, and was standing at the bottom of the stairs. It wasn't the clothes that he was wearing that startled Chris, though. It was what the young man had in his hands that made him immediately stop, in shock. The man was putting on a vest for carrying magazines of bullets, and in his hands, he held an assault-type rifle, while a rifle bag was laying on the floor. Chris froze with fear. The 19-year-old man told Chris to get out of here because something bad was about to happen.
And he said, "You better get out of here. Things are going to get messy."
Chris didn't think twice about following the man's instructions and took off running. Chris came upon assistant football coach Aaron Feis and told the coach about the shooter, who then went to find help. Active Shooter, the podcast, is a High Five Holly production, and I'm your host, JT. If you've listened to our prior episodes, you know that the Active Shooter podcast team has taken the No Notoriety pledge, and we will not be sharing the real name of the shooters that we cover. We will be giving the shooters a pseudonym and refer to them by that name throughout the episode. This will help in clearing up any confusion in the story, while remaining true to our pledge and not naming the shooter by their actual name. In today's episode, we will be referring to the shooter as Frank. Approximately 15 minutes prior to the unexpected run-in with Chris McKenna, Frank had been picked up by a female Uber driver who was driving a small gray car. The shooter didn't have a license. In fact, he had never held a driver's license, and depended on various driving services, as well as walking on foot to get to where he needed to go. When the driver picked him up, he instructed her to drop him off on Pine Island Road in Parkland, Florida. Frank had 2 different bags with him, a rifle bag and a backpack. He told the driver that he was on his way to music class, and the driver had just figured that the rifle case was a guitar case, because after all, the 2 did look similar. It was Valentine's Day, and students were eagerly waiting for the end of the school day. They were talking, listening to music, and playing with different Snapchat filters. Students were trading candy hearts with sayings on them and writing Valentine's Day cards. Love was in the air, although, tragically, it would take just over 6 minutes to become known as one of the worst school shootings in American history. The 19-year-old Frank approached the gate surrounding Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School campus and entered the property through the unlocked and unsecured gate. He started walking towards Building 12, which was also known as the Freshman Building, or the 1200 Building. The structure consisted of 3 floors and 30 classrooms. Out of the 3,090 students in attendance at the high school on that fateful day, about 800 of them were in Building 12. After Frank gave the warning to Chris McKenna, inexplicably saving his life, he slowly started making his way through the first floor. The students were in their classrooms when all of a sudden, they started hearing gunshots.
It sounds like somebody in the bathroom. Shh. It doesn't, right? Yeah. What the fuck?
One student was in the bathroom when she had heard the shots and ran from the bathroom across the hall and into a classroom.
I was in the restroom while I heard 10 to 15 gunshots go out. And I go to the stall, I run really quick, and I grab 2 people near me, telling them we need to get to the classroom right away. And that's the moment I panicked, and the girl with me was hyperventilating because she had asthma. So when we get in the classroom, we were just sitting down, and I had contact with my sister. And then she told me she loved me, and then I heard the gunshots in the first floor, and she didn't answer me.
There was a fire drill that morning at the high school, and when the shots were fired, teachers and students thought they were having a mock active shooter drill. Teachers and students alike dove to the ground, trying to hide under tables and desks. Some students ran to the corners of the classroom to hide. One student grabbed a textbook and held it up to her head in an attempt to shield herself from bullets coming through the door. Students were frozen in fear, praying that if they were to die, they would die painlessly and quickly. The smoke and smell of gunpowder was overwhelming. Though Frank never actually entered into any of the classrooms, he shot through the classroom windows, doors, and also shot at any students that he encountered in the hallways.
There's a glass panel on our door, and it's like a rectangular glass window. He fired at the door from the inside the hallway, through the door, and just started spraying through the door.
Shortly after the gunshots started, the fire alarms went off. After an investigation, officers concluded that none of the fire alarms were pulled. They were actually activated by the sounds and flashes of the rifle being fired. Frank spent 2 minutes and 13 seconds hunting students on the first floor. In just over 2 minutes, he killed 11 students and wounded 13 more. He then made his way upstairs to the second floor. At this point, the student and teachers heard the gunshots happening on the floor below and were able to shelter in place, hiding from Frank. He stalked up and down the hallways looking for any students who might have been left. Frank did shoot into 2 different classrooms, however, thankfully, those classrooms were empty. Some students heard him saying something along the lines of, "No one is here." After only 51 seconds, he gave up on finding anyone, leaving the 2nd floor and making his way to the 3rd floor. There was mass chaos on the 3rd floor, as the students and staff heard the fire alarms and proceeded to follow the steps that they were instructed to in case of a fire, which included leaving their classrooms and exiting the building. Some students didn't hear any gunshots at all, and some heard quiet and muffled noises, but never thought the sounds were gunshots. The bathrooms located on the 1st and 3rd floors were locked because some students had snuck into the bathrooms earlier to smoke. The only open restroom in Building 12 was the 2nd floor bathroom. One student who was on the 3rd floor got a hall pass from her teacher and was going to walk down to the 2nd floor to use the bathroom. While she was in the stairwell heading downstairs, she heard loud popping noises. So she decided to turn around and go back up to the 3rd floor and take cover in her classroom. She probably missed death by just a few seconds. It wasn't until the students and teachers realized that the hallways were filled with smoke and they smelled the pungency of gunpowder that they realized this wasn't a drill. This was very, very real.
I did see blood, and I saw 2 students, unfortunately, curled up in balls. Going down the stairs, I saw more blood, backpacks thrown everywhere. It was like a movie scene. There was gunpowder all over the floor. It was just so real, but it felt so fake at the same time, and I couldn't comprehend it until I just started screaming.
The students that were evacuated from the 3rd floor also realized this wasn't a fire drill, and that their school was actually under attack. In a frenzy, all students and teachers flooded back upstairs from the stairwell and started piling into the classrooms. One teacher had more than 70 students crammed into their classroom. As the students were running into the rooms to take cover, Frank walked down the hall, firing a hail of bullets into the hallway. One teacher, Scott Beagle, was in his classroom, which was closest to Frank when he entered the 3rd floor. Mr. Beagle was holding the door open for students as they came rushing into his classroom, and sadly, he died saving the lives of so many children. Many students said that if it weren't for Mr. Beagle, they would probably be dead.
My geography teacher unlocked the door, and I had ran in thinking he was behind me, but he was not. He unfortunately passed away in the doorway of our classroom. I heard the gunshots, and I've heard the shooter walk down the hallway, shooting more kids. When we were all piled up by his desk, that was procedure for Code Reds to hide and to do anything possible to keep us safe. My friend said Mr. Beagle, which is his name, is not moving. He is laying in the doorway and he is not moving. She said, I don't know if this is real or fake. I believe that my teacher, the reason why he was laying in the doorway is because he protected us. And so the shooter must probably thought, like, there's no kids in there because he was, the classroom was empty. It looked empty. So I believe that the shooter didn't think there was any students in there, but there was probably 15 to 20 kids in there with me. The SWAT team actually came and got us and said it was all okay. Once we were escorted out of the classroom, I did see Mr. Beagle's body on the corner of my eyes near the stairwell.
All of the classroom doors locked from the inside, and once the classroom door was shut, the only way to get back into the room was to unlock the door with a key. One teacher's classroom door had shut before he could get his keys. When the teacher realized he didn't have them, he yelled at the students to run, because there was no way he or the students could take cover in the classroom.
As soon as the fire alarm got pulled, and kids were evacuating, I heard 5 pops.
He was just very focused. He was very focused on what he was doing. And that's, yeah.
I was in the classroom, and all of I heard was shots. And I was just like, oh my gosh, what's happening? And we're just sitting on the floor, and we're just panicking.